I guess I'm a little distracted this week, as everyone is, by current events. So rather than streaming any kind of longer and more well thought out talk, I'm just going to riff a little bit on this T-shirt that I saw once and have inexplicably returned to and laughed at in my head ever since. The shirt says, "Bacon and eggs, a day's work for a chicken, a lifetime commitment for a pig." And that's funny because, of course, a chicken can keep laying eggs forever. And that's fine. The chicken will be okay. Chicken doesn't have to sacrifice itself for a nice breakfast. Whereas the pig can only lay one set of bacon, right? You're definitely killing the pig to make the bacon. And if you're not, that's kind of cruel and unusual to the pig. So why am I talking about this dumb T-shirt on what you know to be the hottest Google Slides live stream coming out of Rockingham Township, Vermont, heading directly to Santa Cruz County, California? It is because I've been thinking about pearls and learning a little bit about pearls. And I had this idea in my head, it's a dumb idea, that pearls were more like eggs, right? You could take them out of an oyster. The oyster's fine. Something that an oyster can, quote unquote, lay again and again. And this is an impression that is cultivated by the style of description of the pearl that Pliny engages in the material I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, where he compares the pearl to a child produced by an oyster. If you're producing a child, the child can leave your body, can be extracted from your body without undue harm to you. Right, so really on that account of what pearls are like, that they form as an offspring of the oyster, they are quite a lot like eggs. But I look into it, and wouldn't you know, it turns out that you can't take a pearl out of an oyster without killing the oyster, because they form internal to the oyster's body. So you're talking about pearls and oysters. Really, a pearl is a lot more like bacon than it is like eggs, because it is a lifetime commitment for the oyster. And I say this by way of introducing something else that Pliny says about oysters, something that I've adverted to before on this stream, and namely that oysters will bite you if they see that you are coming for their precious pearls. Which doesn't make all that much sense if oysters can just dispense with them, but it does make sense if they're these kind of offspring that the oyster can never lose. Offspring that is bound up with the oyster. And this is kind of the way that Pliny explains it. He says that oysters will bite your fingers off if you go in for the pearl because they are aware that they are sought on account of that thing. Nari sea ilo peti. A phrase that Pliny repeats in a number of places in the natural history, all meaning something like this. He's talking about animals that are aware that they are attacked or sought out because of a certain good which they have. And this changes the way that the animal behaves with respect to that good. In the case of the oyster, it makes the oyster bite you when you go in for the pearl. It makes the oyster a little bit paranoid, a little bit defensive. Well, now this is interesting because it seems to be ascribing a kind of an economic sensibility to the animals involved. We can talk about a few different animals. Here there's, for instance, the elephant, which breaks off its own tusks because it knows that it's attacked on account of those for ivory. Talk about the beaver, which self-castrates, actually, as Pliny says, because it's aware that it is attacked for its testicles. Roman luxury good. I have an article on that you can read if you're interested in figuring out how that works. I'm not going to say much more about self-castrating beavers here. Or the lynx, for instance, which has the unique property of being able to piss out amber. Its piss turns into amber. And this is why lynxes bury their piss, because they're aware that they're sought for their amber piss, not ambergris. And so they bury it. They hide it from hunters. So it's interesting. It's kind of a range of different forms of economic relation within which or into which an animal can enter. with the Roman world that kind of wants to exploit it for luxury purposes. We don't necessarily think of animals as economic actors. They're economically important, right, for various purposes. Minks for their fur, cows for their delicious beef, piggies for the bacon. But we don't think of them really as economic actors. And this is a feature of ancient thought about animals as well, for the most part. A number of philosophers say something like, you can't make a deal with an animal, you can't make a contract with an animal. This is an idea that kind of seems to circulate across philosophical schools. Stoicism, Platonism, Peripatetic, Aristotelian thought, maybe even Epicureanism. You cannot make a deal with an animal. You can't do negotia with an animal. You cannot do business. But in the way that animals are described in natural history texts, this absolutely does not hold. Animals are definitely critters that you can do business with. Right? They understand that you're after their tusks or their testicles or their urine. And you can maybe negotiate with them. The key feature here is that the only currency that animals seem to appreciate, the only term of negotiation which animals appear to understand, is violence. Right? What causes a beaver to castrate itself, what causes an elephant to knock off its own tusks, is not a desire to make money. What would they do with money? But a desire to avoid getting kills. That's the negotiation into which these animals enter. Well, who else is like that in the Roman world? Studies of the Roman economy tends to ignore the importance of violent exploitation in that economy. I think just because it's kind of a background feature that goes without saying. So a lot of the studies of that economy that happen nowadays focus on kind of monetary transactions, capitalization, that kind of thing, but do not pay attention to the ways in which goods are actually forced to circulate, especially from the provinces. Provinces that, prior to the Edict of Caracalla in 212, are populated by non-citizens, people who do not enjoy the same protections that Roman citizens do. Among those protections are, for much of the history of the Roman Empire, freedom from taxation and freedom from corporal punishment. These are features of Roman citizenship that kind of seem to go together. And two things to which dwellers in the provinces of the Roman Empire are subject. Definitely they can get zapped with violence, and they do have to pay taxes. These two features kind of go hand in hand, as the taxation is extracted with the threat of violence. And the taxation has to be paid in coinage, for the most part, in money. Money which the Roman Empire itself mints. So it has control over the supply of this money. How are provincials getting a hold of the money in the first place? Well, by selling off their various luxury goods. So indirectly, a lot of Roman economic exchange, especially on the luxury end, but also when it comes to basic staples like wheat, really is this kind of negotium of violence. Violence is the thing that makes it work. So when Pliny extends that logic to animals, he's not inventing a new kind of transaction that you just make for animals. He's really, in a very literal way, extending the kind of transaction that Rome is engaged in with the provinces all the time to the world of animals. Well, some animals fall for it. Elephants, beavers. And interestingly, if you think about the places that Pliny locates those animals, they are within the bounds of the Roman Empire. They're in the provinces. So elephants live in Africa, the province of Roman Africa, which is equivalent to kind of the Maghreb as we think about it today. There are elephants there. Beavers are said to live in Pontus, which is a province of the Roman Empire as well at the time that Pliny is writing. They probably don't live there. That's another story. Again, I'd point you to my article about this. But beavers and elephants, animals that voluntarily give up their own goods to avoid the threat of violence, live inside the empire. When we talk about lynxes, which scoundrels that they are, hide their piss rather than giving it up to Roman hunters or whoever's hunting for amber out there, they live near the Baltic, outside the bounds of the Roman Empire, in the world that Roman writers know about, but outside Roman political control. Now, same with the oyster, of course, because it's underwater. There's not much you can do about that. You cannot politically subordinate what is underwater. As it happens, oysters also live way outside the bounds of political control of the Roman world. The best ones, as Pliny says, live over in the Indian Ocean, which is correct information as far as it goes about where pearls are most easily found, the natural grown ones. But there, under the ocean, is the place where the provincial subject can actually fight back. It doesn't have to kind of run about furtively or surrender its bits and pieces to Roman hunters. There, finally, the subject gets a chance to bite the hand that exploits it. Well, that's really all I have to say about the t-shirt. I hope that everybody's staying calm and hydrated. I look forward to talking to you again, same time, same place, next week.